The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and/or the persons appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of FRC Media, Bristol Community College, or the City of Fall River.
Well, good morning and welcome to Spindle City Straight Talk. I'm CJ and my co-host is on assignment in Las Vegas. I had two other co-hosts scheduled for today and both of them had to cancel in the last minute, and that was because of the power outage that we've experienced here in New England based on the storm that we had on Monday or Sunday night into Monday. As many of you are well aware, we were not on the air on Monday as we here at the studio were without power. We had zip, zero, zilch, no power whatsoever. So couldn't exactly broadcast with no power. Sorry you missed our show on Monday. Sorry I missed our show on Monday. We had a great show planned, some of which I will give you today. But first, let's get to some house cleaning. First off, there will be a debate at 12 o'clock noon on WSAR 1480 on your AM dial. That program will air for 2 hours, I believe. It will be broadcast live on Facebook on the WSAR homepage. It will also be rebroadcast here on Channel 95 by FRC Media. And as soon as that's available, I'm sure you'll see it in the scheduling component. There will also be another debate this evening at 6 o'clock here at Bristol Community College in C Building. That debate will be in Portuguese and is being sponsored by WHTB 1400, Radio de Voz do Imigrante. And Frank Baptista will be, I believe, the moderator of that debate. It should be interesting to see because that debate's going to require some translation because Mayor Jaisal Correa doesn't speak Portuguese. And City Council Vice President Linda Pereira does speak Portuguese. Now, if the debate is fair and they give him 2 minutes, then it's going to be 1 minute for Jaisal to espouse his view and 1 minute for his translator because that gives him the 2 minutes. But again, I don't know, and I'm wondering if Frank Baptista is going to keep it that way because, as you know, we ran into a problem with Frank Baptista because our debate was originally scheduled for today. But because Frank Baptista didn't want to contact any of the media outlets, he scheduled his for today as well. And as you can tell, because WSAR is having theirs today, it was just a matter of, I guess, an attempt of a power play by Mr. Baptista. And we don't get into power plays. We just scheduled it to be the final debate of the season, which will be tomorrow at the Kuss Middle School at 6:30 p.m. You need to come out and see it. It will be the final mayoral debate. It is still not too late to get your questions out there. If you send your questions to debate at scstonline.com, that is scstonline.com, Spindle City Straight Talk online.com, we'll be more than happy to give them to our moderator and be sure that he considers them for inclusion in the debate. Remember, this is the people's debate, which means it's your debate. So your questions will be answered. You know, this past week, the Herald News ran an article about people thinking 17 candidates was a lot of candidates running for city council. I didn't think that. We've had more. We've had 21. We've had 25. But how about 65 candidates running for city council? You know, that was back in 1951. We don't see that much anymore. But we also don't see the outpouring of voters like we've seen in the past, like in 1951, 1960, even 1970. We don't see 60 or 70% of the voters come out and vote. We don't see 80% of the voters come out and vote. We're lucky if we see 12 or 14% of the voters, which is poor. And that shows you that you, the voter, you, the citizen, either if you're not going out to vote, you don't care about voting, but you care about complaining. Well, if you don't vote, you can't complain. And that's always the rule you have to adopt. It's important for your voice to be heard. And the biggest place for your voice to be heard is at the ballot box. So always try to remember that. I found it interesting that on a few days, about 5 days ago, it was announced that the DEA is focusing resources on Fall River to combat the opioid flow. This comes out just before our state Senate takes their votes. And we're going to talk about that in 1 second. But City Council Vice President Linda Pereira has been talking about partnering with the DEA to stop the drug flows through Fall River. Creating packages and cooperation agreements with other organizations like the DEA to assist our Fall River Police and our city in cleaning up this opioid problem. But our state senators, more particularly State Senator Michael Rodrigues, because that's the one we have to deal with here, said, no, we don't have to do that. We're going to reduce the sentencing for that. And we're even going to reduce the sentencing for dealing drugs in a school zone. So when mommy or daddy comes home from work and Junior's sitting there with 5 bags of heroin, and they say, where did you get that? Oh, the guy at the school gave it to me. Hey, mom and dad, guess what? Call Michael Rodrigues, blame him. This is his fault, it's his doing. He's the one that voted. It was a 27-10 vote. Mike Rodrigues was not one of the 10 people against reducing these sentencing. He's all about fighting the opioid problem, yet he's willing to reduce sentencing because his party, the Democrats, want to reduce sentencing for crimes. Because, are you ready for this? Here's their excuse. There are too many people in prison. You like that one? We're going to reduce sentencing because there are too many people in prison. That is poor. That is poor. And as somebody who used to work in the prison system, I can tell you, that is poor. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying some guy who is there for petty crimes, should be getting 3.5, 4, 5 years in prison. If he, stole from a candy store or something, and it wasn't armed robbery, he just, reached across the counter, stole the money, or whatever the case may be, it's still a crime. And some punishment should be applied. But the majority of people who are serving extended periods of time in prison need to be there. Maiming people, shooting people, stabbing people. But we want to reduce those times in prison? People who are dealing drugs. And do you know that one of the components they wanted to make as part of this criminal justice reform bill was that the dealer could be charged with murder if somebody overdosed on drugs? But again, they shot that down. So if little Johnny overdoses on heroin that's laced with fentanyl that he didn't know about, and he dies from that, the dealer is not responsible. And some people say that's right. The dealer is responsible. The dealer didn't tell him that he has to go out and buy the drugs. The dealer didn't tell him he had to go out and use the drugs. But did the dealer know what the drug was laced with? Heroin is a cheap drug. It's $5 a bag. And I hear people going, oh, well, I go through 10, 15, 20 bags at a time. Really? A recent article in Commonwealth magazine said that Narcan is not the cure. It's a Band-Aid. And that's the truth. But we seem to be making Narcan the cure, and it's not. We're making it available everywhere, in our schools. Pretty soon it's going to be available at the bus stop. And that's not where it needs to be. It needs to be talked about at the dinner table. It needs to be talked about in the schools. Education is important. And speaking of education, yesterday, City Council Vice President Linda Pereira had a press conference down at 140 8th Street. The property owner at 140 8th Street, did not want them there, so they had to move a little bit, and they did, and they still had their press conference. And she talked about partnering with organizations within the city, and obviously she called out her opponent for closing down River to Recovery and other programs. And as she said, she wants to work to make these programs available, not work to take them away. And she pointed out several areas where this mayor has indeed taken them away or closed them down, either himself or through his employees. And the thing that people have to remember is the buck always stops at the 6th floor. So whether it was done because the building inspector or the fire inspector or whatever had to do it, that is a direct reflection on the mayor. The mayor did it. Like it or not, the mayor did it. And while all these people are talking about working on, solving this opioid crisis, a lot of their actions are contrary to a solution. Why? Because it's become the big money issue. It's become the big money maker. We see companies popping up all over the country. Come to us to get clean. Florida, Utah, Nevada, California, Texas, Maine. They're showing up everywhere. And they're charging the insurance company tons of money. You even have our own programs here in Fall River, STAR, Stanley Street Treatment and Resources, trying to get a lot of those contracts. They want more money. It's a money maker. It's a money maker. And what money is that? That's tax money. At what point does it stop that the taxpayer pocketbook stops getting robbed? That's the big question. I hate doing this alone because without my co-host, I don't have any banter going on. I can put up a blank screen, but it doesn't work too well. How many people have seen the pro and con statements for the charter and for the water bonding issue, $123 million? The pro and con statement on the charter issue, me being slightly biased, seeing that my name is attached to the con statement, I think were written pretty fairly. Meanwhile, on the water bonding issue, the $123 million bond issue, they were both like, you have to vote for it. It was unfair. But should we expect anything less from Attorney Joe Macy? That was an unfair statement. It did not tell the people what was going to happen. But we here at Spindle City Straight Talk are going to tell you what's going to happen. We've seen opinion pieces in the Herald News about if the wastewater bond is approved, it gives Fall River control over costs. Well, I'm sorry, Mr. Sullivan, but that's bull because you're the one that created all these costs. You, Mr. Sullivan, because you did not file the necessary paperwork for us to get grant money. You didn't do the job properly. And let's add to the lies and bull that you keep spreading. Water fee increases. Oh, it's only going to equate to 17 cents a home. Well, explain to me why my water bill doubled. And everyone I speak to, their water bill doubles. I've spoken to single-family home owners where one person lives in the home. And their bill is up to $80 to $100 a month, a quarter. $80 to $100 a month for one person. They're not using that much water. See, here's where he sells it. Well, it's 17 cents more per cubic foot, per CCF on the water. And then it's, X number of dollars on the sewer treatment plant. Oh, but then we're going to raise the rainwater tax. Oh, and we're going to raise the meter fee, which we never had before. So this mayor and this water department head decided to rape your checkbook, rape your pocketbook, and force you to decide whether you're going to pay for medications or water. if you pass this $123 million bond, your water bill will go up again to pay this bond, because the water fund is an enterprise account. That means it must be self-sufficient. Doesn't matter that the city took out the bond, the water enterprise fund must pay the bond. So that payment is going to get lopped onto top of the water bill, like it or not. So remember that before you check off yes next to a $123 million bond. Because if you do that, you don't mind paying more money. Because that's what's going to happen. We are going to pay more money. And that doesn't include the increases, which Terry Sullivan seems to find every year that we need. Every year we need a water increase, and every year we need a sewerage increase. How many people notice that that rainwater tax fee is up to $45 now? Bet you didn't notice that that rainwater tax went up. Who did that? Your mayor and Terry Sullivan. And some people say, well, the city council voted for it, or the city council didn't vote for it, or whatever the case may be. The mayor proposes, the city council disposes. So the city council disposed of this, and it wasn't even a unanimous vote. You had people like Joe Camara, who said, yeah, the hell with the voter, the hell with the taxpayer, raise their water bill. Yet Steve Long, the hell with the taxpayer, the hell with the voter, raise their water bill. Those are the votes you need to look at before you go into the ballot box next Tuesday and say, okay, I'm going to give a vote to this one, this one, and this one. Oh, wait a minute. This one, this one, this one voted for an increase in taxes, increase in water, increase in sewer, increase in fees. Is that what you want? Do you want a city that keeps raping your checkbook every day? You know, the new term of drain the swamp is really becoming more realistic at Fall River than we've ever seen. And I think it's important that we look at that. The reason why people in Fall River get elected and reelected is because it's a popularity contest. You, the voter, do not look at what they stand for, what they've done. The vote is always, oh, I know him, he's a nice guy, he's my next door neighbor, you know, oh, he's been on the city council for 20 years. Yeah, and guess what? No changes. He's been on the city council for 16 years. Guess what? No changes. It's time for significant change and change in government. Maybe someday we'll see it. Because guess what's happening? Because there is no change in government, because people are not seeing that, because people feel uncomfortable living in their own city. They're unsafe. Gunshots fired daily. Children carrying knives into school. The school department and the school committee doing nothing about it. Dr. Malone does not do anything about this. Oh, we're going to do pat checks. We're going to do random searches of bags. That's not going to do it. This city received a grant for the metal detectors to be put in the school. And where are those metal detectors? Down at the Fall River Police Station. Put them in the school where they belong. And if the kids don't like it, too bad. It's also time to stop making sure that spirit wear or school uniforms get in place there too. They're in every other school in the city except for Durfee. It's time for Durfee to have them too. It's time for that to happen. Parents are looking for the school committee and the school department to address bullying, class sizes, all stuff that we just seem not to be addressing. The mayor has said, oh, he's reduced net school spending, but none of that went to reducing class sizes. As a matter of fact, we're over 400 students more in the system than we had previously or that we planned for. Did he tell you that now because there's 400 more students, we have to spend more money? Is that more money planned in the budget? Not so far, it's not. And he's not talking about it. He's not talking about that. 400 students mean increased spending. which means net school spending must be higher. But again, it's a political season. It's an election year. We're not going to talk about that. We're not going to talk about it. You know, there was a youth conference, a youth panel this week. A lot of people were very pleased with these students, and you had students talking about they're afraid to go home, they're afraid to go to school. That wasn't the Fall River I grew up in. Was it the Fall River you grew up in? Is it the Fall River you want your children to grow up in? There's a problem there. There's a problem when our children are afraid to go to school because they're afraid they're going to be shot or stabbed. Bullying went on when I was in school, but not as bad as it's going on today. And it's worse today because we have social media. And our kids are sitting in schools with their phones in their hands, and they're doing this in school. Instead of listening to their teachers and learning what they're supposed to learn, they're playing with their cell phone. That's not what school was about. I'm not saying we take away the phones from the students, but they need to be kept away, put away. And any time you can go through the school and you will find a student talking on their phone or texting away. They're doing it through classes. They're Snapchatting in class. They're Snapchatting the teacher, and they're making comments about how bad the teacher is or how poor it is. And you know, you have to ask yourself, is this what we want? Is this truly what we want? I don't know. It seems to me that it's a situation that we need to address. And we need to address it appropriately. And we need to devise a policy. School committee members, potential school committee members and current, develop a policy which has our students wearing uniforms at Durfee, which brings the metal detectors in, which requires that their phones be put away from the time school starts to the time school ends. There is no reason for a child in school to be using a cell phone. When I was in school, I didn't have one. So there's no reason why they have to have one now. And I've seen it with my own grandchildren. They're in school and they're Snapchatting away. My personal opinion is, if a kid is caught in school using his phone, they take it away from him until the end of the day, give it back to him, and have the parent come and get the phone, not the kid. That will stop it pretty fast. There's a question being risen by school committee handler Josh Hetzler because of the wording in the new charter that says no city employee, compensated city employee shall serve on the school committee. But he's still running. Now, if this charter passes, there is no grandfather for him. He can't serve on the school committee. But here's the rub. Currently, in the current charter, it is alleged that the same provision applies there. That even if he's elected now, he may have to resign as a firefighter if he wants to serve on the school committee. Even now. And I'm going to look into that a little bit more. I heard that when I came in this morning, and I was listening to WSAR, and a very knowledgeable person called in and said, it's proposed in the new charter, but it's in the old charter. So I'm going to bring it up on the old charter, and I'll have that for you Friday. And Friday we'll be talking about our debate. So it'll be a very interesting day, to say the least. But, you know, Mr. Hetzler has filed a request from ethics. Ethics has nothing to do with this. The grandfather clause under state law only applies if it's enacted after you're in the position or after the situation occurs. This is going to be simultaneous, which means that if it passes, you may not be able to serve as a school committee member if you're going to retain your position as a firefighter. But if it doesn't pass, you still may not be able to serve as a school committee member and a firefighter. So you'll have to look at that as well. I'm going to be looking that up, as I said, this evening. I'm going to find it, and I will be posting it on our Facebook pages, and I'll also be speaking about it Friday on our show. Because if that is the case, then, Mr. Hetzler, you obviously didn't do your due diligence before deciding to run. And regardless of whether or not you get elected, the question then becomes, if it's true that you can't serve even under the current charter, the question then becomes, number one, why did you run? And why didn't you do your due diligence to find out that if you were elected, you'd have to resign as a firefighter or resign as a school committee member? Because you're taking the position away from somebody, if elected, may want it. And that's a problem. Because it looks like Mr. Hetzler will get enough votes to be elected. But do the people want to elect somebody who may not be able to serve? That becomes a big question. Becomes a major question. And a question for you, the people, to try to understand. Do you want to vote for a potential person who may not be able to serve? Fall River was lucky through this storm. We got most of our power back on Monday. A lot of people are still without power. The health department is saying that if you're still without power and your power has been out for 4 hours or more, please dispose of your perishables. You don't need to get sick. I want to remind you that, again, this afternoon at 12 o'clock, a half an hour after the show is over, will be the WSAR debate. AM 1480 from 12 to 2. It'll be City Council Vice President Linda Pereira and City Mayor Jazel F. Correa II. John Colmy will serve as moderator. Rich, Alan Zarek and Rick will serve as people posing questions. It should be an interesting debate. And then once again at 6 p.m. this evening, here at C Building at Bristol Community College, will be the WHTB AM 1400 debate in Portuguese. And it will be aired on AM 1400. It will also be aired on FRC Media Facebook page. And it will also be aired on FRC Media. And then, of course, the People's Debate tomorrow, November 2nd, 6:30 p.m. at Kuss Middle School. We expect to see you there. It should be a great event, a great evening, and it will be the final debate of the season. This season we've had 5 debates. Five debates for the final election, which is rather a lot of debates, to say the least. So I hope to see you at the debate. I'll be there. I know my co-host Chip will be back this evening, and he can tell us what his trip out to Vegas was like. And I'm hoping to hear from you very soon at the People's Debate. And I know that you also will be sure that we know what's going on with you. So I want to thank you for watching, and we'll see you on Friday. And remember, as we always tell you, stay angry. Have a great day.